I try to encourage people to realize is that everybody has the two greatest tools known to mankind at their access. It depends on how they want to access it. And that is your mind and your spirit. The more we strengthen those, the more we train those, the more empowered we become. And life's a team game. And so many people have inspired me and challenged me. I use people from Aristotle to Chuck Noll to Walter Payton to my own daughter at 9 years old. So it can come in a variety of ways.
This is Entrepreneurs the Playbook, where I give you access each week to the world's greatest athletes and executives about their personal and professional playbook and what has made them champions on and off the field. This is the Playbook.
This is Dave Meltzer, CEO of Sports One Marketing with Entrepreneurs the Playbook. Very odd to interview Merril Hoge because I dreamed of being interviewed by you for so many years. Not that they're that
we
much
can do that later.
All right, cool. I love it. I love on an entrepreneurial show to talk about setbacks.
Okay.
One of the philosophies I've had in my life, because I'm like anyone else, I've had huge setbacks, especially financially, was a setback was always a setup for me. And once I got old enough to realize that, but as I did research on you, your life was full of setback, setup, setback, setup. It started with your football career. You had a real big setback.
Yeah, well, I mean, when I was a kid, I almost lost my hand in a farming accident, so I guess it kind of started there, but maybe that's where I established a find-a-way philosophy in my life that I think everybody is doing at some point, rather it's something they're trying to change, something they're trying to accomplish or overcome. You're trying to find a way. Now, how do you go about doing that? The one thing that those words have always inspired is action. Like you do something about it. Don't sit there and point fingers and make excuses and blame, find solutions. And it was more difficult as a kid to learn how to put that together. And then my life's journey, so many people either inspired me or challenged me that help mold me to today. So it's much easier to address setbacks or challenges or when I set a goal than it was back in age 12, but it all started then. And what I try to encourage people to realize is that everybody has the two greatest tools known to mankind at their access. It depends on how they want to access it. And that is your mind and your spirit. The more we strengthen those, the more we train those, the more empowered we become. And life's a team game. And so many people have inspired me and challenged me. I use people from Aristotle to Chuck Noll to Walter Payton to my own daughter at 9 years old. So it can come in a variety of ways.
Speaking of having a 9-year-old and having kids, one of the difficult things about being more successful is that we, especially today, shelter our children from the setbacks. And I feel that my biggest fear as a parent is that, gosh, I had a really hard upbringing with a single mom, 6 kids in Akron, Ohio, and out of necessity, my siblings are far more intelligent than me, all went to the Ivy Leagues, et cetera.
Right.
But, my life was made because I had a level of understanding that there needed to be action combined with the law of attraction, right? I would say action's in that in spirit. I'm a very spiritual person. How do you empower your only one child?
Two kids.
Yeah. Your
Girl,
kids.
boy.
You're able to do so much more than some kid from Idaho.
Right. Well, Find a Way became a parenting tool. Not only that I applied to my kids, that helped them in their journey, but I would try to challenge them to think of ways to get better or think of things, create a plan. And I used to love learning about their plans because they would come up with things that I would not have come up with. But then it helped me kind of try to become the best parent I could be. And so I stumbled across this, it was actually called a father's letter, but the message from it was I judge my kids in the yardsticks of their years and not mine. And it's always given me two things in life, patience and perspective. Now, it was instrumental not only when they were young, but even as they've gotten older, I still apply that because they're still learning, and they're still evolving, even though one's 25 and one's 22. It isn't like they know everything.
Yeah.
There's you know as well as I do, and you're back in 21. You think you know everything.
Right.
You don't think anybody can teach you something.
I don't mean this the wrong way, but I have this philosophy. I have 3 teenage daughters,
right.
And I tell my wife all the time, number one, what do people do with bad kids? Because my kids are really good, and they're tough, But I'm sorry to say this, but I believe teenagers in general, girls or boys, are the dumbest creatures ever created.
And we used to be part of that.
Oh, I was the dumbest of the dumbest.
Exactly.
I'm just lucky to be alive.
Yeah, exactly. I go back and look at it, but then it comes all the way back to these things you learn in life, and you try to encourage young people to apply these things, think about these things, and see how they affect your life. Usually, it's about living dreams as a young kid. The Find a Way thing was about living a dream, playing in the NFL. I'll be honest with you, I didn't realize it would be instrumental in all of the challenges / setbacks that I had. I didn't realize it would become a vital tool in that. And I never thought it would be a parenting tool, but it's evolved into something that's been real powerful for me.
That's powerful for others too. I read it back when you wrote it, and today I had looked it back over before we met,
right.
And these 4 things came to mind as an entrepreneur. I invest in people, not businesses, because I believe every business evolves. So if I have the right quarterback to my business, I'm going to have a successful team and eventually make money from it. But find a way first is that way maker. Like, I need someone to run a business that's going to find a way, right? He's a way maker. Then I think the spiritual side that's in your book, I call it the miracle worker.
Right.
There's the people that no matter where they go, they're lucky. Oh, I was with the CEO of the Hawks before, and it's like, well, I got lucky because I'm like, wait a second, you went to Columbia, worked as an analyst 100 hours a week, then you went to Stanford and got your MBA, and just because you met some guy from the Portland Trailblazers, that was luck?
Yeah.
No, he wouldn't have paid attention to you but for,
things he had done.
Exactly. Then I also picked up in the book being a promise keeper, doing what you say you're going to do. Mm-hmm. And I think you were drafted like 260 around there. Somewhere there. Not the first round draft pick, but you had a great career. Right. And then because of who you were, you moved it into a whole nother career in books and also with purpose. And I really respect those 4 things, and that's what I believe it takes. Those 4 things, you're kind of a light in the darkness guy. Those are the things I look for in an entrepreneur as well. And you proved it because not only were you successful without the most talent in the NFL, I wish
I was the most talented there either.
Yeah. Although Warren was my business partner, it drives me crazy. We'll watch the World Series, it's like, baseball is my best sport. And then we'll watch basketball, it's like, basketball. I'm like, okay, when you're a Hall of Famer, let's be honest. No, there's no other sport you were better at than being a quarterback, buddy.
Right. Well, you know what? I mean, I can identify with that. When I was a kid, my best sport was baseball. I was really recruited in basketball all through junior high, and when I started going to high school, and I really wasn't. Football, I was just considered, a good player. I was a good player, but that's the sport I loved. You talked about, being an entrepreneurial. The things that are important, passion always exists in that. What are you passionate about? Like parents all the time come up to me and like, I want him to play football, but he wants to play, or she wants to play some other sport. I'm like, well, then feed that passion. They don't have to play football. It's not for everybody. That's why, thank goodness, we have all kinds of other sports to get involved in and engage in. So don't make your passion their passion.
Yeah, thank God my mom didn't either. She wanted me to study, and I wanted to play football.
That was not your passion,
no,
studying.
I played football in college. I played football in college off of one skill. I could run fast, scareder than anybody could angry.
That's pretty good. Speed. You can't teach speed.
Or I say I was blessed with a big mouth, so I had to always run away from my older brothers. In a 2-bedroom apartment, I learned to...
You learned quick.
Quick holes, right? Now, purpose is a big part of it, and you've evolved with a new book. With a critical business and life issue, which is CTE.
Yep.
And I think as a running back, nobody has more experience in understanding what that's like. I met with Tony Dorsett, and there's obvious things that have happened. Tell me about, first, the purpose of the book.
Well, the purpose of the book was to explain all the scientific truths and facts, okay? In the journey, I started to discover, when I'd meet with neuropathologists in this country and in Canada, I started uncovering all of the scientific evidence, not a little smidgen that we've been hearing. And that's when that became alarming. When you start sitting down with neuropathologists and go, hey, listen, could you explain CTE to me? I see the headlines, I don't understand it, what is it? And when they keep saying, well, yeah, it is a pattern, we're observing. Okay, we don't know what causes it, and we don't know what it causes. There's cases in the medical journal where they never played football, hockey, had any head trauma, no concussion history, but they have that pattern. you say, well, why do we in the media keep hearing it's just in football, it's hockey, and that causes it? And I go, there's no scientific literature of that. When you start hearing that the narrative is that grotesquely being abused in a public forum, to sit back and do nothing actually would be worse than they were.
Yeah.
Especially if you know what the scientific facts, like what I'm telling you, I can prove to you. Okay, if somebody said I was wrong, I'm telling you they can't prove that to you. They don't have the scientific literature to back it. And what people need to start saying is like, show me the scientific literature. Now they got to be smart what the scientific literature is. I literally had somebody try to pull a Sports Illustrated article up and say that was a scientific.
Right.
Okay, that's not. Just so you know, folks. Okay, it's a JAMA. Okay, things like that. It's not Sports Illustrated or the garbage you see in the New York Times.
Yeah.
You have to get the scientific literature, and they can't prove that because there's no scientific evidence of that. There's no scientific evidence that football causes CTE, hockey causes CTE, concussions cause CTE, and subconcussion. Don't even talk to me about that because that's not even scientific yet. It's science fiction in the scientific world.
What my biggest fear is about misinformation or ignorance is that, what we see, we believe, and sometimes we can manifest things. I'll give you some examples. I'm blessed from running Lee Steinberg, having all these great relationships. I was with Sugar Ray Leonard, who's a good friend. Obviously could be a victim of CTE if you think of his sport. And we're sitting there at the golf course, and he said, Dave, he goes, I don't know if it's old age or CTE. He goes, but I swear I left my golf clubs here. And the guy down there is telling me I did. He goes, it's things like this that make me worried. Do you think I should go get tested? And I'm sitting there and go, always get tested if you want to get tested. That's fine, but don't. You're 60-some years old, and I'm around a lot of 60-year-olds, unfortunately, now that I'm getting old, and we forget things.
But here's the problem with that.
Here's what's funny. The guy came back up. Yeah. Mr. Leonard, I'm so sorry. I put your golf clubs in the wrong place. They were down there.
Right. Okay. But here's what people need to understand by that. Do you know how many people in this world do that daily? Okay. That is not the problem. You should have said, hey, listen, do you know what your golf clubs are used for? Yeah, I play golf. Okay. When you don't know what your golf clubs are used for,
there's a problem.
Then you have a problem. Misplacing golf clubs, misplacing keys, everybody does that. But
teenagers.
That example right there is where I got that. He's got that. Where is he? Why would he even think like that?
Right. It's pre-programmed.
Headlines that he has seen. Okay. Headlines that are garbage. Headlines that are not true. Okay. There's no cause. There's no link. There's nothing in that scientific literature. But in the public arena, they use words like that. You can do that in a public forum. Now, if you put them in the court of law, you're not going to hear those words because what they're going to do in the court of law, they're going to say, prove it.
Right.
And they're not going to be able to prove it.
It's arbitrary and capricious.
Right.
Now,
so
knee injuries aren't, right? We know you can hurt your knees playing football and prove it.
Sure.
Right?
Well, yeah. There is no doubt of that. I mean, there's documented. A documented injury is a documented injury.
So on the other side of it, because we always, no matter who you are, right? And I think it's funny that they pick on football players the most with CTE because there's so many sports that have I've been told causes all types of plaque in the brain or whatever, like shaking your head or hitting your head. I watch MMA, and I've never heard one person give one fear. This is a huge sport.
Sure.
I think they were sold for $1 billion from Fertitas. It's a pretty big sport.
Absolutely.
I've never heard one person in MMA say, well, we have a great concern about our fighters.
Right. That's just why when people say the other line, okay, the bad science behind CT and the plot to destroy football. People could go, why does the plot destroy football? You just mentioned all of these sports that have head trauma, concussions, and you only have legislation to ban tackle football till age 14. Yeah, MMA, boxing, wrestling, soccer, lacrosse, hockey. I need to keep going. Every sport.
Rugby.
Why don't you incorporate those if you are so passionate about taking care of our kids? It has nothing to do with the kids. It has everything to do with your agenda, money, and your ego. Okay? Yeah. There's no scientific evidence to back that legislation whatsoever.
It's interesting. Through the other side of it, you're not saying, because I want to make this clear, because I know you're not saying, let's not make sure we have the best protective gear. Let's make sure that we tackle in the right way so that we don't have injury. You're just saying that stop picking on football and prove that there actually is some sort of connection between playing football, which millions and millions of kids, I played till I was 22, right? And I will tell you, I have no symptoms of what they say is CTE. And why would it be? I played from 7 till 22 years old, and I went to college so I could play.
Right.
May not have been the greatest college, but I played. Why is it that most of the people that I know that played football don't have CTE?
Well, there's a lot you just said right there. Okay,
Sorry.
first, if anybody even
Teach me how to interview, I'll keep them clear.
If anybody even challenged where I stood on being proactive in creating a better, safer environment, they have done absolutely no homework and no due diligence. Because I took a doctor to court after my career ended in 1994 because of improper care. Now that gets confused into what this book is about, which tells you the incompetence of people and the deliberate ignorance of people. If you go look at that, why did I do that? To make sure that that type of care never happened again. And I was thinking about just the NFL at that time. Well, that evolved into youth football. Well, who's the first person in this country to stand in front of Congress and say, listen, could we do head trauma protocol for all ages 8 to 18 in 2009? And oh, by the way, Boston University was sitting there. They're so smart, they're so active in taking care of our youth. Why weren't they saying it then? Why weren't they trying to be proactive then? So to anybody to say that, they better do their homework before they speak in those terms, because they're going to get exposed for their lack of due diligence. So first and foremost there. Now, when you talk about all of these sports, there's still no scientific evidence that shaking, because then if you jumped on a trampoline, you went on a roller coaster ride, you played with you had brothers and sisters,
Yeah.
I'm sure you tackled each other, wrestled with each other. Okay, if you did any of that, now we can include billions and billions of people who have been living like that, being active like that, we'd have epidemic proportions of issues if you listened to their unscientific or science fiction garbage. That's why you have to say, listen, if you're going to say subconcussions are doing this, stop. Can you define subconcussion, and can you show me the scientific literature that you went through the proper steps, and what is it scientific? Where are you going to get crickets? Because what they're going to say, we don't have it. But then they're going to start dancing around, all these are. If you don't have the scientific literature, you can't speak like it's scientific. But I can present to you all of the literature that exposes it's not scientific, it's nothing but science fiction at this point. Why? Poorly defined, it's misleading, can't measure it, therefore science fiction. I could show you literature upon literature with that.
That's a really good point, because to bring it back to entrepreneurship, which the reason that this is here today is an entrepreneurial thing, right?
Sure.
I'm a lawyer, unfortunately, but lawyers, right, in medical practice, they're making a ton of money, right? I've been approached because I know so many athletes under the guise of, we have to protect Merril, please, can you introduce me to Merril? Because, there's different levels in the settlement. And meanwhile, I'm looking at what they're taking. If they sign on with us, and I'm thinking, if this guy actually is injured and we have a settlement, whether or not it's just or not, I'm always for players getting money at least.
Oh, sure. If they care, listen, I'm an advocate for taking care of players. What I'm not an advocate of is lying and being deceptive and not being accountable. I got a problem with players like that. And what I mean by that is, you get done playing, you're a drinker, you don't take care of yourself, you're obese, you consume sugar, you're inactive, you're doing drugs, opioids. And you're not going to say that's not a part of, when I can show you scientifically those are contributors to all our brain health, cardiovascular disease, and cancers. You're going to do all of that and not hold yourself accountable for how your lifestyle has been, and you're going to blame football for all of your issues.
Right.
I mean, that's grotesquely embarrassing, actually.
And
if
the settlement itself also includes, you could play, I think, 4 weeks on a practice squad.
And be eligible. Right. And so.
Right.
And see what players need to
compared
get
to one who
over.
played till he was 44.
Right, okay. But here's what players, this just speaks to the deliberate ignorance when they're like, oh, your book's going to hurt us. I'm like, okay, just so you understand, since you are that uneducated, okay, the settlement's a settlement. They're not going to take my book, we're going to unsettle.
Right.
You're a lawyer, you know that.
Yeah.
And people need to understand that settlement, the clarity in the language there, the science is uncleared, therefore unsettled. There was not enough scientific evidence. So the scientific evidence isn't even strong enough. They just settle. When you settle, you settle. It doesn't mean that the evidence was there. It is not. You go read, you're the lawyer. You can go read that and prove that. So being responsible for yourself, being accountable for yourself is also what a player has in his due diligence. When you fail to do that and you keep blaming something, I just don't think there's no excuse for that type of behavior.
So last question, with the suspicion of CTE, regardless of sport, what would your advice should be the next steps? What should we be doing to explore this?
Well, first of all, there's a ton of research being done on this particular subject. I'm going to go back to what they said. We're in an observation state. You have amazing doctors like Lily Hazarati, Dr. Cummings, who was instrumental in helping me with this book. I couldn't have done this book without a 3-board certified forensic professor, okay? This guy has seen and cut more brains than we could ever dream of seeing or doing, okay? He's taken me in and allowed me to cut brains and learn things at levels I never dreamed of. He's done a brilliant job of helping people understand where we are in the scientific literature. Is that work going to continue? Absolutely. In fact, the more work we're seeing and the more research that we're getting, what is it starting to point to? It's starting to point to things like obesity, sugar consumption, inflammation, which all of those, that's the leading ingredient to all of our diseases in our bodies. Then you go to drugs, alcohol, opioids. Those are the things that are lifestyle and affecting us, okay? The evidence that they say is from sports or football, there's absolutely none of that. So is that scientific work going to keep going? Absolutely. But what has been done to this point from the equipment that we have today, the helmet today is 5 times better than it was 10 years ago. Now think of how much better it was 50 years ago.
Right.
Think about hundreds of millions of people who played in that archaic state, okay? Would have epidemic proportions if they said.
Well, besides, the helmet can't
sports.
stop this movement, and that's dangerous for the brain.
So, well, we don't know how dangerous it is. I mean, because then if you went on a roller coaster ride or a trampoline, you know, or what about all the what about all the rock and roll headbangers out there?
Yeah.
What about all the kids that are I got 2 grandkids, 5 and 6, who run across the front room flying to the couch 100 miles an hour. You don't tell you that's not a sudden shift?
Right.
So what, you think kids in America aren't doing that every single day?
We hope so, instead of playing video games.
Right, because now we circle this all back to where are we, what are we doing? Okay, the improvements that we have made and how we go about practicing, incredible. Equipment, incredible. Okay, treatments and therapies that exist today should be empowering to everybody who's ever had any type of head trauma in any environment. How do I know that? In 1994, the end of my career, they said, listen, you got 2 years. We'll see how you are after 2 years. Whatever you have, you have. Whatever you overcome, you overcome. That's what I have in 1994. My son's first concussion here, 3 years ago, slips in a shower. Okay, not even on a football arena, okay? His treatment and therapy, they gave him a cognitive program, a physical program, a nutritional program. In 10 days, they identified the area where he was vulnerable from the concussion. Okay, so just think about that evolvement. In 10 days, Bo, my son, had the clarity that he had before the concussion. How it helped clear him up, repair him. I got people like John Saunders, who you may remember, who's a legend at ESPN, who's slipped in a studio, okay, not even in an athletic arena. So what I'm getting at is the treatments and therapies that are here today versus where they were in 1994, empowering to everybody, but especially parents. If your son or daughter have an accident, we have ways to care for it and treat it. The protocols that are in place, we're not going to allow them to return back to the environment if they had one. And if that's not being a part of your program, make it a part of your program. Nice. We know how to do that. Well, right there, we make it a better, safer environment. Let's not live in fear.
And I think that's important, because you're not saying let's not make it safer. You're saying
this book is about making it safe. It's all about that.
And it's also, to me, on an entrepreneurial side, 10 years ago I lost everything I had, and I was able to make it back for one reason, and it's the same reason this book is here. People look at the decisions and they believe them instead of the assumptions that were made. They're not more interested than interesting, and it sounds like, and I'm going to read this, we need to look at the assumptions made before we make a decision. Is that fair?
You remember what Mark Twain said? It's easier to fool people than to convince them they've been fooled. And that's what's happened. People have been fooled by this, literally all of these headlines. But if you read the scientific literature and you do your due diligence, and if you don't, actually you are the denier.
Yeah.
If people go, I'm a denier, I'm not. I've done my research.
Right.
I've read the literature.
That's a
I've
great
had
point.
to explain to me. I know the truth. I gave you the truth, so you have all the information. Now you do with it what you want. I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm trying to open your mind to all of the facts.
And help. Well, I really
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Make sure this has a lot of life lessons as well as critical knowledge about CTE, which sounds like, although I played football until I was 22, it sounds like some of the stuff I did before football may have.
Yeah, I think about your backyard might have been more dangerous than a football
or
field.
the Super Bowl. You did
Or
say
the party.
alcohol, right? Yeah,
I did say alcohol,
All
definitely.
right. Well, this is Dave
Thank you,
Meltzer
brother.
with Merril Hoge. Incredible, man. I like both your books.
Well, thank you. I should
thank you
appreciate
very
that,
much.
brother.
With Entrepreneurs, the Playbook.